Welcome to the Simon Racing Report. For the first time that we're ever doing this, rewatching a classic Formula One race, and who better to bring than Nick Rowland. And Nick, we always seem to have fun recapping some of the big events on these podcasts, whether it's sim racing or Formula One wise.
Yeah, I think we've done a few recaps now that have been good fun to do. So why not go backwards this time around to look at some old stuff, which arguably is probably better than some of the recent F1 stuff.
Yeah. Watching back this race, Formula One did upload it. I think it's removed now. It's been quite some time, but Formula One did have it on live streamed for everybody to watch. And what a classic it was. It started out with, as soon as you click play, the old Formula One intro plays. And I was thinking, which one of these is the best of all time? You've got four of them. You've got the old one that they played with the little rock music. Then you got the one that was playing, in the early 2000s when ITV was broadcasting, basically. Then you had 08, I think, or 09 to 2017, and then you got the current one. But which one of those is the best?
I don't mind the new one, but I would say it is probably this one from '98, that sort of period with the rock theme over it. It was very nostalgic for me personally, because it's kind of the early days of me watching F1. It's like with the intro themes to ITV, similar sort of thing. They were very varied. Moby's Lift Me Up, I think, was one of them. So it's those types of things that I draw from quite a lot in terms of nostalgia. Not to say the recent ones are bad, or in terms of intro themes, the chain and stuff like that, but yeah, I think the actual, what would it be, the FOM intro.
Yeah. Let's keep it to FOM intros, because that will make it easier.
Yeah, the FOM intro, I would say, that rock one was always good fun.
The first time someone showed me the rock one, I remember when I was younger, and I was like, wow, this used to play at the start of F1 races? Like, I couldn't believe it. And it sucked me in straight away. It's not my favorite. I really enjoy the one from 2009 to 2017, before they changed the logo and the new theme music and everything. That's my favorite. But this one's a close second. It really sucks me in, gets me into the race, and then you go into this race, and I mean, what a classic this was. You had some of the worst weather I'd ever seen. At one point, I think, do you remember? And we'll keep it simple. We'll start from the beginning of the race, go to the end, blah, blah, blah. We're not chopping and changing like the Last Dance documentary. But there was, at one point, a camera shot at Les Combes during the race, and you couldn't even see a car 5 seconds behind. Like, it would say on the timing screen, it would be like, oh, Damon Hill's 4 seconds behind Schumacher. And I'm like, oh, has he crashed? And then he just appear out of nowhere, like out of oblivion.
Yeah. I think even from... The thing is that as the race went on, it got worse. It got worse and worse and worse. I think it was after the first round of stops. There's a camera shot that runs from Blanchimont to the bus stop. And it's just spray. There's nothing. You can hear it, but you can't see a single thing. It's just pure spray for like 3 cameras in a row.
Well, let's go to the start of the race. So Schumacher, this is Michael Schumacher. He starts the race on intermediates, and we must remind viewers there is a tyre war going on, which hasn't happened in Formula One for over a decade. But you've got your Goodyears and your Bridgestones, and Michael Schumacher is... last year he did the same. They mentioned in 97 he started the race on inters. The race actually dried out the previous year, so it was much easier. But the cars that seem to run the Bridgestone tires seem to be a lot quicker. Am I getting it mixed up? Or is it the Goodyear? I can't remember which ones, but one of the two tires, I feel like that was the biggest difference for Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari, was that for him running the... I'm having a look at it now. What did Ferrari run? They were running the Goodyears.
Yeah, it was good. It was the Goodyears. The Goodyears were the tire of choice, especially in the wet. But for a long period of time up to that point, Goodyear were the choice of tire. Even Ferrari were running the Goodyears, and this is before the domination era with Ferrari and Bridgestone. So it goes to show that the fact that the relationship even with Goodyear at the time was pretty solid, and a lot of teams did have them as well. Yeah. So the Goodyear tire was a very respected tire manufacturer, but of course by the end of '98 they'd gone.
Yeah, exactly. The end of this season, which is
Yeah,
bizarre because if you look at the tires now and who was in the race, like the Ferraris and the Williams were on good years, the Jordans were on good years, Sauber as well, and the Tyrrells. They were all the cars that seemed to be doing well in the races in
yeah.
this race. So for some reason, these Goodyear wet tires were just pretty much dialing into the racetrack. And you had a brilliant shot as well, I remember, of Mika Hakkinen on the formation lap. They showed his eyes with the clear visor. And you don't get that shot these days. I think the only track you can really get it is, I think, Abu Dhabi, when you run in the night time and they run the clear visors then. That's one that when you see the driver's eyes, I don't know, it's weird. Sometimes it just makes me
Yeah.
think, like, is it actually Mika Hakkinen, or did they throw like a doppelganger in there? And he just
Well,
confirms when you look at his eyes, it's actually him driving.
yeah, and that's the thing is that you see. I think Singapore would be the other one you could possibly think of at
Mm.
night, where you would see it. But I don't know. I mean, both of us coming from a sim racing background. I don't know if you've ever been on the rig for a long period of time. You go, I don't know, you go get changed or something like that. You look in the mirror and you've got bloodshot eyes, completely bloodshot eyes,
Mm.
because it's like you haven't blinked for an hour or something. It's crazy how your eyes start to go. And it reminds me of the way the drivers look. It's just their eyes they're on stalks of so much focus, that you would start to develop the red eye, in particular. And you do see it with some drivers where they're almost got bloodshot eyes,
Mm.
and it's from the sheer level of concentration, and especially in a race like this one, then it was always going to be with the conditions where hyper focus and concentration was needed.
Yeah, so quick question for you. Would they have raced these days, do you reckon? Would it even be a safety car start these days?
That's interesting. I actually put that on a piece of paper next to me to ask you the same thing. So I didn't want to take notes or anything like that before this, but no, they wouldn't. I don't think that race would have started, or it would have started behind the safety car for a long period of time.
Yeah.
We've had that before, but no, I don't think this race would have started at all. Like I said, once you see the cameras with the spray and the rooster tails coming off, then I don't think that this race would have got going at all these days.
The one thing I
Um,
wondered was it the quality of the cameras that made the weather worse? Because I'm thinking there's no way these cars aren't aquaplaning in this weather. Like these
well,
days, the cars would have aquaplaned and would have slid into the wall. The cars seem to cope well. So I'm thinking it was the cameras and the quality, maybe.
possibly, but I don't. I still think you. Well, I mean, the downforce levels and stuff you would have today would be better. The tire development would be better. So I don't know. I think today you could run in pretty much most conditions. The drivers would complain of aquaplaning, but you'd get away with a lot more than what you would have done in '98, I think.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point too. So then we move on to the crash, which is, I think, the most iconic crash in Formula One history by
I
far.
would
There's been quite a few ones, but this one was the funniest part to
certainly
me
the most
about it
amount of
was,
cars in it. Biggest crash, impressive amount of cars.
yeah, you see David Coulthard come past La Source on the exit, and you're like, oh, okay, he seems to be traveling well. Then all you see is a lot of spray, and on the other side of the spray, he's into the wall head first. The craziest part about it is there were no tethers at all. There's tires flying everywhere. I remember tethers were introduced at, what was it, 2009, 2010, where there was mandatory that they tripled the tethers or something like that, or there was some rule. So you don't really see tires or wheels flying anymore. And one of the wheels almost flew into the stands. I couldn't believe it. And the one fan's just poking his head out. This is crazy. This is 22 years ago, and this is this unsafe.
That's the thing, is that I think there was a video actually, or there's a different camera angle of someone in the crowd, and it shows how close one of the wheels actually went to the crowd as well.
Oh,
The
wow.
way it bounced
Mm.
down the track. But of course, in those days, there was no tethers.
Mm.
The tethers really are, in some ways, fairly recent. You've got to believe, they are only within the past 10 years or so, that they actually came in. So yeah, it's strange to see that, and the way that the energy dispersed in that crash, and where kind of all the bits and everything went. The monocoques all stayed together. You see that very, very clearly, especially with Coulthard's car, who's got beaten and battered around
There's
pretty
nothing
heavily.
left.
No, but the monocoque all stays together. So it goes to show even then, post Senna, that those monocoques changed quite a lot,
Yeah.
and they were significantly safer. But yeah, I think in terms of the surrounding areas and the way that the energy was dispersed, I mean that was still a fairly new thing with obviously the no tire tethers and stuff bouncing down the track.
Yeah, it was. I definitely know in 2010 they at least tripled the tethers, or they did something. Because I remember Timo Glock crashed in qualifying in the Virgin at Hockenheim, and I remember the wheels still fell off the car, and it was a big deal because that was when wheels weren't supposed to fall off. So there's been trying improvements. The engineers have tried to improve those over the years, but the worst part about this is you had Eddie Irvine limping back to the pits. Yeah, drivers injured. I think Rubens Barrichello was bleeding. Did Martin Brundle said he had like blood on his race suit or something?
Yeah, it's on his like elbow. It looks really weird, but it looks like he's he's got a red mark that looks like blood. It's kind of strange, but it's only just like one. I don't know if he's like slashed his arm on the underside of his suit or something, but yeah, there's definitely something there.
Yeah, and it was weird because I was thinking, don't they wear like a couple of layers in there? Like, he'd be bleeding that bad. Like, he'd have a loss of blood. He'd probably fall unconscious if he was bleeding that much, surely, if the blood's gone that deep. But I might be wrong with that. And the worst part about this is, I don't know about you, but a pet peeve of mine, why do track marshals always seem to want to grab and hold drivers whenever they crash? Is it to stop them from falling? Is it to check that they're okay? They always get so personal. I think at one race, I remember Raikkonen bloody flipped off and like almost punched the marshal away because he was touching him too much. Why do they keep touching the drivers? They don't need to.
I'm my. It'd be great to actually understand a marshal's perspective on this.
Yeah, we need to ask one.
Yeah, to actually to see if that is some sort of must that they have to do. I would probably say that they have to do it to lead the driver away from the incident, or they have to lead the driver to the medical car. I would think it's something related to that, and they have to do it in X amount of time, where they can't just sit on the side of the track like Hakkinen did, but crying behind the bushes, that type of thing. I wondered if it was related to something to do with that in terms of having to do something in a certain amount of time. But that would be the most infuriating thing. You just had a crash that maybe isn't your fault, and you're being dragged away by a person in a giant orange suit. It's
a
it
jumpsuit.
ain't prison. Yeah.
Exactly. And then there was so after that, basically there's just pictures of the delay, and it's a pretty long delay. I think I saw Jarno Trulli with a beard. He looks so different. It looks like he's part of NSYNC or something like that. I don't remember Jarno Trulli with a beard. And then
both those drivers had to go back, didn't they? But it was the Prost drivers, Trulli,
and Panis.
And Panis, that was it. Yeah, Trulli and Panis. They both had to go back. I think one had the T car, one got the car rebuilt because they both restarted.
Yeah, they only got one T car. Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It was Panis. Yeah, that was it. Panis sat out, but it was Trulli that restarted. But yeah, of course there was 4 people that didn't even get to restart.
Yeah, I'm looking at the results now. So the drivers after the crash who didn't restart were Riccardo Rossi. Jeez, that's where are they now? I don't know where the fuck he's doing these days. Mika Salo, I'm pretty sure. And it says Rubens Barrichello and Olivier Panis. The rest of them started again.
Yep.
So it was because it's a weird race because you look at the results sheet and it says they're listed as do not starts, but just the way the rules worked is they're only listed that way because technically the rules don't consider the first start. So that's why they're listed that way. Which can I also say, talking about cameos, just before I forget, there was a Maurizio Aravabene cameo. I don't know if you saw that as well in the garage. And I was mostly disappointed because I don't remember seeing Gino Rosado anywhere. And I was like, he was working for Ferrari at that point, surely.
I didn't actually see that cameo whatsoever, to be fair.
What, the Aravabene one in the garage?
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
Well, I
And he
just
watched it yesterday as well, and I still don't remember seeing him then.
well, anyway, he was there. It was only like 3 seconds, but I just remember the comment section going wild for him too when he popped up for those 3 seconds. But anyway, you skip to the second start. Or is there anything else you want to say about the first start, or is that all?
The first start is I think one thing you said there about Coulthard is the fact that he shot across. I think that was one of those situations where he had aquaplaned and it was I think more to the left than what the other drivers had been, and it shot him to the right, obviously with not fully warm tyres yet as well. So but the chain reaction, actually, the way that it happened then afterwards, the way that obviously he bounced off the fence and came back onto the track, and it was just like car after car after car. It was more like a Fast and the Furious scene than anything else.
Yeah.
Just smashing into each other.
Well,
It was kind of crazy how all of that chaos came into one small area, because the way the track narrows out of pit lane, well, back then at least anyways, that obviously the pit exit leading into turn one, that's quite wide anyway, the old turn one, where you had the barrier on the outside. It's quite a wide area, really, if you look at it actually on the track, because you've got a pit lane, you've got the racetrack extended out to the other side then as well with a barrier. But then it all funnels into this very narrow, or a significantly narrower bit of road on the run to Eau Rouge. And it's like Coulthard hit the exact wrong spot to then filter the car coming back into the circuit into the start of the funnel. And that funnel effect obviously had all these cars trying to go full throttle, and there was nowhere really for them to go. If the track had been wider at that point, you would have, if it carried on with the way that the pit lane exit and turn one filtered out, it might not have happened. But the way that funnel effect happens, I think, is what really made the crash even worse. Because there was just nowhere for people to go. I think
well,
even
if
at the
you
people at the back, with the way that the
yeah.
cars kind of had stuff everywhere, and the spray in that, they couldn't see anything, and they're trying to navigate it. And of course, that funnel effect got smaller and smaller the way that they all kind of went down the track.
Well, I tried to research and try and look at a lot of different camera angles for this. But the thing is, back then there aren't many camera angles. I don't even think they introduced onboard cameras until the next year in Formula One. So the first onboard camera we had was on the Williams in 1999. But I might be wrong with that. But I'm pretty sure that was the case, because when you watch this race, there's no onboard shots. And I'm thinking, is that because of the signal, the rain? But I don't think they had onboard shots. It wasn't a thing back then. And you don't actually see on the TV feed David Coulthard spin. So you can't tell if he aquaplaned. I thought, did he touch the grass at one stage? Like, I was getting confused. So you actually,
Well, that entire outside was tarmac, wasn't it? That there was no sort of grass runoff until the after the funnel effect. Because if you watch the second restart as well, the entire left side of the track on the exit of La Source is tarmac barrier.
But then doesn't the grass begin on the? But you mean the initial exit, not the second part of the exit.
The initial exit. So where some drivers would loop out very, very wide on the exit of La Source, some would go almost right out the way to the barrier and do like a NASCAR style where you sweep back in and you keep the momentum high.
Yeah.
And then it's like the funnel effect is where the grass then starts then on the left side, that runs all the way down the left side to Rouge.
Yeah. So anyway, look, that's the story of your average iRacing crash in Formula One, and
that happens every day.
We move on to the second start. So the what the best method I had, if you had watched this race, let's say with no pictures, you were just listening to it, you cooking something, doing whatever. This is the best way I could tell that they went to the second start. You can just hear it in Murray Walker's voice in Formula One when they skip about an hour and a half or hour 15 of delay, and Murray Walker's voice has no enthusiasm left for the second start. And I'm like, I think he was sick of just waiting so long for the second start. Imagine if he was commentating on 2011 in Canada.
I think it was just short of an hour that they were waiting before the restart. Of course, back in those days, is that Murray Walker and Martin Brundle would have had to do a lot of filling, because they didn't have the opportunity to throw back into pit lane like they do now. they could throw back into pit lane, they could use Skypad and all that stuff these days. Well, they didn't really have that opportunity back then.
Hmm.
So a lot of the broadcast, I think, was then filled by um, the commentators that were having to do a lot of talking over the top for what felt like a long period of time. I don't think that situation would be quite the same these days. I mean, even in what was it, when did Button win? 2011.
2011 Canada.
Yeah, that was 4 hours, but they were able to throw back to pit lane and do other stuff and talk to other people and that. So
Yeah, they can do all the features and stuff. Exactly. Which makes things easier. I mean, they only had, I'm pretty sure they had James Allen and I think it was someone else as well in the pits, but I can't remember the names. But
yeah,
so race begins anyway. We get to the second start. It's all good. Hakkinen has the little, I mean, there's arguments whether or not he touched the Ferrari or not, but he definitely had a spin, and that put him out of the race, along with Johnny Herbert.
It doesn't look like they touch at all. Like I know that Hakkinen was quite vocal in saying that he did, but if you watch where the Ferrari is, again, he takes that very sort of wide line. It looks to me like Hakkinen sees Schumacher going around the outside, getting on the power nice and early, getting all that nice traction, and he just hammers the throttle too hard and drops it. Of course, as he's then rolling backwards, gets hit by Johnny Herbert.
Yep, so that's race over for both of them. So that's at the second start. And I think Alex Wurz as well was involved in a crash somewhere too. So Alex Wurz out of the race. But that's it. Finally, we get rid of 7 cars in 2 starts on the first lap. And then we go through the race and the cars come through at the end of the first lap. And I'm watching them scream through. Well, not scream through. They were trundling through in this weather. Through the old bus stop chicane. And it got me thinking about Spa. We got to talk about which corners look better in the modern day and which ones look worse. And if we start off with the bus stop, I'm in 2 minds about whether or not I prefer the bus stop they have today or the one they had 22 years ago. Because they both look cool. But I feel like the one they have today, it just looks better and is better for racing.
It's gone through quite a few variations in that time as well. Like, it's not just been one change that we've had. There's been different versions of bus stop. I quite like both of them. It's weird.
Yeah, in different ways.
Yeah, I like the old one because the way that it flowed on the exit out of the corner was quite cool, and the way that you came back onto the start straight, I thought that was quite a nice. Yeah, I thought it was quite cool the way that was done. The one today, I think, has a lot better potential overtaking opportunity than the old one does. But even the old one, you were still able to overtake. I think the biggest difference is they really slowed the apex speed down a lot more with the new one. Whereas the old one, it was even in '98, even though they weren't even sausage curbs, they were like corrugated curbs. It was weird the way that they were angled. You couldn't run across those. So I think they were both decent corners, but it didn't lead to. I think the biggest issue was actually the pit lane entry more than anything else, is why they changed it. And in today's one, makes a lot of sense of how safe it is. But I didn't mind them both. I thought they were really quite okay. The one thing I will say is that on camera, the camera angle of the old '98 one
looks better.
Way that it looks way better. Yeah, it looks tons better, especially from head on. It looks such a nice corner compared to today's.
Yeah, there were some blogs I read where in the old days they used to have low camera angles, whereas these days everything's higher up, so you can see a lot more, but it doesn't look as thrilling. So when you have that low angle, it looks so much better when you're in the bus stop.
Well, I tell you what, actually, just as a going off on a slight tangent here, did you see Karun Chandok post on Twitter the other day about why Mika Hakkinen's lap from, it could have been in the same season actually, why it just looked better, like why it looked more alive and on edge, and he said, was that because of the cars were lighter and stuff like that? Could it been like what was the reasons for it? And I watched the lap and it's like, yeah, all the old laps just look so much more knife edge like it's on such like a knife edge of grip, and they look quicker. Even though we know sitting here now that all the modern F1 cars are going as quicker than they ever have done. Um, but yeah, the lap's actually 1998 Magny-Cours is the one he shared, and it looks insane. But the one thing about the cameras as well is obviously the frames per second were lower. I think today they're at 60, but back then they were at 30. So I don't know if that has a contributing factor as well with how the eye actually perceives speed. It's like when we sim race. Most people are up to 144 hertz monitors, and the whole thing is just smooth. It's silky smooth to race compared to 60 hertz.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if there was an element of that to it, but the cars are just alive and on edge, and I think it's a combination of the power and how light they were. Obviously, these days we've got the power, the hybrid, the downforce, but they are so heavy. They're such heavy cars because of the batteries.
1998 Formula One actually wasn't that fast if you look at lap times
No,
when you look back at it. Like the quickest lap times, obviously, of all time, pre-turbo hybrid were obviously 04, 05, around that time when they had the V10s. But yeah, 1998, like the lap times were terrible. Even 1999 was pretty slow, but they just look good. And you're right. I think it could be the weight. I'm trying to Google what the actual weight. Well, I'll find it out later. I can't be fucked at the moment, but I'll find out the weight later about 1998. But yeah, it's a good point by Karun. That could make it faster. But anyway, when you going back to the chicane, that's one that yeah, I'm in two minds about that. I like the looks of the old one, but I do feel like if you're gonna make a dramatic change, I think Spa's done it as good as you can make it. Like you've made it look wider, more open, look more spacious, just looks better for racing too. You've opened up the pit straight, and the final corner as well. When you take the old chicane, especially on like a simulator, for example, it's still pretty fun. Like you lose the rear end because it's off camber all the time, and it can be quite a challenge, and it does ruin your lap sometimes. It does piss you off because you're thinking like, oh, it's just a quick little right left, like that's it. I just need to get around this, but it's a very tricky, slow chicane that can that can ruin your lap if you get it wrong. And then La Source. So what do you think about La Source? Opening it up in the modern day, is that better too?
well they haven't. It's not really. It's open, but the track's not because it pinches on the exit more, so doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it makes us again. It makes sense, and I suspect because of '98, that's why the La Source is the way it is now. To be honest, I would have thought that's the actual reason that the profile and the design of it is the way it is. Because there's a large runoff area well beyond the edge of the track limit. The edge of the curb is then what is it? It's Astro and then all that tarmac. So I think it's just the nature of the corner, but it tightens a lot more than what it used to because the track limit was all the way out to the barrier in '98. Now you kind of you have more of an edged line with a curb.
Yeah. So it's the crazy stuff, and I was just looking at the results too, and there's like a lot of mechanical failures and retirements in this one, which is even in 2019 Germany, when we had one of the most chaotic races of the decade, obviously. And even that, I think, had everyone finishing the points at least, or something like that. Had everyone, a lot of finishes for that one. But I'm looking at this one and I was thinking, man, I miss mechanical failures, in Formula One. Even though it's an old thing, maybe it's a good thing that it's left in the past because it makes watching these past races even more rare and even more valuable. And then the funniest part about it all is when Jos Verstappen had the engine failure and they left his car at the exit of Pouan for the whole race. They didn't even move it during the safety car. Did you see later on?
Yeah,
his car was
I
there
did.
the entire time.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you actually just made there, though, as well as the fact of the unpredictability element. That's the thing that F1 misses these days because the reliability is so good. It is. They are almost bulletproof. They're making engines last 3-4 races. Back then there was so much unpredictability with reliability and whether the cars would hold together, even in '98. And that's the thing, is that you could have a driver leading loads and loads of laps, but then all of a sudden break down. It's like, oh my god, this changes the championship, direction completely and stuff like that. Whereas Formula One has improved with its reliability and it's got better and better and better. They forgot the fact that, well, okay, the unpredictability is now dropping. We saw them trying to pass each other cleaner and easier by introducing DRS and in all these types of things. And Formula One have got the rules wrong. It's as simple as that. They've got them wrong.
For entertainment, because
yeah.
For entertainment
for entertainment purposes, yes. From a technology standpoint, I mean, look at the engines. I mean, these engines in Formula One are engineering marvels. They are unreal what they can do, and the capability and the thermal efficiency and all those types of things is just cutting edge, unbelievable technology. But it was the single biggest thing that F1 didn't need. It didn't need these engines at all. There was absolutely no need for these modern day engines at all. And the thing is if you look at the entry list, for example, in 1998, and you look at the factory or the manufacturer backing of these teams
of the engines. Yeah.
Of the engines, it's insane. Like,
well,
how many
can we read those out? Let's read them out.
We got McLaren Mercedes.
Yeah.
You've got Jordan Mugen Honda.
Yeah.
Ferrari.
What does Mugen mean, by the way?
Mugen's a division of Honda.
Oh, geez. I feel like I should know that. Anyway, go on.
It's the sports performance parts of Honda. Yeah, Ferrari, obviously. Williams, which by then was Mechachrome, but really that's a Renault.
Yeah.
Benetton Playlife, that's a Renault.
Well, Playlife was a fashion clothing brand, wasn't it, or something?
Yes, they were. Yeah, they were.
That's like Tag Heuer sponsoring the Red Bull.
Same thing. But they that was a Renault, really. Sauber Petronas, but that Petronas was a badged Ferrari.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think. Yeah,
no, you're right. I think that's correct.
Yeah, I think.
Or one of the years was.
Yeah, Prost Peugeot. So that was Peugeot backing, even though the money was very, very low from Peugeot. And then the rest of them, Stewart, Tyrrell, and Minardi, were all Ford. Actually, the only one I don't know about, what was Arrow's engine? It wasn't Yamaha. That was the year before.
Well, Arrow. It just says Arrows here, but I'm thinking, wait a second, is that because this is Wikipedia? But I'm trying
98 Arrows. I'm just trying to think what the. I can't remember who did their engine actually.
But wait, so what was your point here with mentioning all these engines again?
The point is the fact of we see an entry list there of such high manufacturer backing.
Yeah.
Compared to today, where we see 4 manufacturers, and technically speaking, Honda is entered as a engine supplier than an actual manufacturer, even though that they work with Red Bull.
Yeah.
And the fact of these, that you would have thought by now, if this technology would be working and proven, that you would have at least some consideration from some more manufacturers and more engine suppliers. I mean, look at the amount of times we've heard Audi and Porsche and BMW all potentials. Oh, they might come back into Formula One. Toyota have literally turned down their entire car to make a level playing field in WEC. There is an engine there that they could use in Formula One, but won't. Why? Why don't they? Why did Porsche not take that engine that was very close to the F1 engine and not go and put it in an F1 car? Why? Like, there's so many things there of, is it purely the financial and the climate we're in? I don't think it is. I don't know. There's more to it than just that.
Well, there's a lot of trauma that they're still recovering from. I still feel like they would have won the 2010 F1 championship potentially had they run their car. Apparently that was supposed to be I mean, if
Who?
you look at the budget for 2009, they spent the most money and they never raced the car in 2010. So that
Oh,
explains that.
Toyota.
Yeah, with Toyota, like
Yeah,
you look
okay.
at
Yeah.
the '08 budgets. I think Honda had the highest budget in '08. I might be wrong with that, and they ended up winning the '09 championship. And then Toyota had the biggest budget for 2010. So people were tipping, oh, this car might be the best in the next year or whatever in 2010 when they folded. Problem is, it's Toyota, so it probably would have been like the worst car ever because that's what they seem to just put out there with all the money.
Toyota. The biggest thing that they did is that obviously they were a very old school Japanese style, which was decision by committee, and that didn't sit well with people like Mike Gascoigne. He knew how to get that team forwards, and he did a lot to take that team forward as well when he was there. And he was like, you know what, this is not, you can't run a Formula One team like this. So he left. But if you'd left Mike Gascoigne in charge of Toyota, I firmly believe Toyota would have won a world championship.
Yeah, but yeah, potentially with that budget, like there's no way they wouldn't have won had they, had the behind the scenes been run properly. So yeah.
It's the same. It's the same principle for BMW, though, isn't it? I mean, after Montreal 08, when Kubica won and he was leading the championship at that point, if you remember as well, he'd gone in front of Hamilton.
And then they stopped producing the car.
And they stopped. They stopped doing anything with the car. They just totally stopped development. And we're like, oh yeah, we're going to focus everything on 2009, and it was pants.
Their 09 car was terrible. I think Australia, they were on for a podium before Kubica and Vettel had a crash, but that was it. I don't remember many other good results from that season.
It was what they did there was weird because the 08 championship was getting closer and closer to halfway in the season, and they were in with a chance.
Well, had there not been a rule change, I really feel like they would have kept going with it. But I think they sort of saw the rule change as an opportunity to sort of win that 09 title, which they didn't do.
Like, it makes sense, and I understand the reasoning behind it. But 8 rounds in, and why would you not just do something more with that car? Especially with how well Kubica was driving at that time as well.
Yeah. Well, anyway, going back to the Belgium race. So there was a front wing change. Do you want to guess? I watched the 2019 Austria Formula One race from last year, and they changed Lewis Hamilton's front wing. Do you want to guess how long that took, roughly?
Hamilton's front wing?
Yeah, to change it in a pit stop.
10 seconds?
Yeah, roughly. It took just over 10 seconds. James Allen says, James Allen's like, oh, let me show you how quick they do a nose change. That's when he came on as a pit reporter. And it took 17 seconds. I was like, this is the slowest fucking nose change of all time. This is terrible. And he was like gloating about it, saying, let me show you how fast Formula One does nose changes. And I'm watching this going, wait, was this supposed to be good back in 1998? I thought it was going to be way quicker. But I guess 17 seconds, actually, when you look at the numbers, isn't that bad compared to when you look at it today. Even today, I feel like 11 seconds is so slow. Like, they rattle around with the front wing so much. It's it gets frustrating watching that at times. But I don't know whose front wing that was, but
Eddie Irvine, I think.
Yeah, possibly.
Was it Irvine's?
Maybe. I don't know if it was. I mean, Irvine fell into a lot of trouble this race. But talking about Ferrari, the Michael Schumacher Coulthard incident later on. So when I watched this incident back, one of the best moments, I reckon, in Formula One drama, and there's, if you had to put percent of blame on 3 things here, how would you do it? Because you can put a percentage on Michael Schumacher, a percentage on Coulthard, and a percentage on the weather. So what percentage? How do you allocate that to these 3?
Ooh, that's a good question.
If you do, because the way I was thinking about it,
I would put a low percentage on the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Because
a low percentage.
Yeah.
Well, like how much? Like, what's low to you? 20?
20.
Okay.
And then it's difficult because I've watched this a few times, and the way I look at it is a bit like sports car racing. And you know when you got lap traffic and you're like a GT3 trying to pass a TCR or something like that, the the biggest thing with it is that Coulthard stays on the racing line and slows down. Like, he stays on the racing line with the spray behind him.
Yeah.
And he slows down. And Schumacher just kind of arrives.
But Schumacher probably can't see him. That's the thing.
Well, he probably can't. He probably can't. But that's kind of what I mean, though. Like, that's not where you should be really slowing down. Not on the racing line. If he pulled to the left and let him go, then that makes sense. But he slows down on the racing line.
Yeah.
And when Schumacher comes back into the pit lane and he goes down to Coulthard's garage and starts screaming and shouting at him, I get it. Like, there was a lot of people saying, oh, he's just being Schumacher. No, I get that. To be fair, like, if I was in that situation and someone had just slowed down dramatically on the racing line in wet conditions,
and the
you
McLaren.
not too far behind, you'd be absolutely fuming over that. But from Coulthard's perspective, he's like, well, I did exactly what the team told me to. I slowed down. I was letting the race leader by. So, it's a tricky one, but because you could say, you could say it's 50-50 because, well, Coulthard's on the racing line, shouldn't have done that. Schumacher should have been more aware and been more cautious. If you actually remember, a few laps before that as well, I don't know if you recall, but the pass on Diniz and like how risky the pass on Diniz that Schumacher does. He's a back marker and he's going, and it's a big risk to take and just to throw it down the inside and hope that it sticks. And hopefully Diniz jumps out the way essentially.
He was in some rhythm this race. Like, that's why he was so quick, unstoppable. The car was dialed in, and he was in some rhythm that you just couldn't stop. So I feel like if you told him to slow down, I don't think he could. I think you just needed to leave him alone and manage it. And the way I saw it was, you got to blame, to me, I would blame at least like 60% on the weather, because if Coulthard slows down in the dry, this is a relatively straightforward pass. Schumacher just moves over to the title line to the inside and loses time. But in the wet, I definitely blame the spray. I blame probably 30% on Coulthard, maybe 10% Schumacher, thinking we don't have an onboard view, but maybe could Schumacher have done something different? So that 10%'s in dispute, or it goes to Schumacher. But it's a tough one. And then I think Michael Schumacher has 3 wheels and almost beats David Coulthard to the pits with no rear wing. But I feel like and I'm not trying to trash Michael Schumacher here because I do really appreciate him as a driver, but I do feel like it's much harder to drive a Formula 1 car without a rear wing than a car with 3 wheels. In my opinion.
In those conditions, probably isn't.
Because imagine like a Formula 1 car with no rear wing, like you're not even supposed to keep it. You're supposed to spin. Then the first time you turn, you're probably supposed to spin.
You've still got 4 tyres contacting the road.
Yeah, but 3 wheels. But Schumacher's missing a front. What was it? The front right, I think. So
No.
So then
front right.
You're just going to pick up understeer, whereas Coulthard's trying to fight the car not to crash. All Schumacher's trying to do is just fight the car to just
no, that's
get
what
it
I mean.
to turn
Though, is
in.
at that speed, he probably wouldn't be. Like, to be fair, like he probably wouldn't be fighting it that bad because there's still 4 wheels contacting the road. He's not trying to produce downforce at that point, which is what he needs for the rear wing. Like, he's not trying to speed it back because there's no rear wing. Schumacher is hustling a 3-wheeled car round. It's quite impressive, actually.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to cop a lot of hate for that, but I still feel like that's overrated. But I do feel like if I was Michael Schumacher, I would have done the exact same thing. Stormed in. I'm that competitive. I'm pissed off. You just ruined what would have been probably, definitely at the end of his career, if not the best, one of the top 3 drives of his career if he'd won this race. The same way we look at Lewis Hamilton's 2008 British Grand Prix. Similar drive, similar conditions, dominated, wins by a large margin. That's what we're on for with Michael Schumacher. And then the worst part about it for Ferrari is the next lap, Eddie Irvine retires at Pouhon. So they got a double retirement. They've gone from a win to literally nothing in 2 laps with both cars. It's probably the worst 2 laps of Ferrari's. Well, apart from Brazil last year was pretty bad, but there's pretty bad stuff for Ferrari going on at the moment in this race.
Very true. And it's one of those races where you look back and you think, well, could that have actually swung the championship the other way potentially? But then again, he did retire in Japan, so probably not.
So the final things about this race, the commentary, which I don't know. I don't want to keep asking you to rank things, but I do really like this team they've got: Murray Walker, Martin Brundle, with James Allen in the pits. The thing is, though, did you notice this race, the lack of chemistry between Brundle and Murray Walker? It seemed like they both wanted to talk over each other almost about everything.
It was the early days, though, wasn't it? It was only first or second season of
second
them?
season, I think. Yeah, with them
as a partnership, and you could really tell how how fresh it was, and Brundle was still he was quite heavily diplomatic still. He's a little bit more candid these days. He's a little bit more open, and he gives his opinion a bit more. But he was very he was very matter of fact in the time. I think what kept happening quite a lot was the fact that Murray Walker kept getting things wrong, and it meant that Brundle kept having to talk over him to correct him. I think there was the crash when Irvine went into the wall and took his front wing off, and Murray Walker called it as Schumacher.
Yeah,
there was a couple of instances like that, and there was clearly some tripping over each other that happened, and some corrections, and it wasn't smooth and fluid like it is today. For as much as I don't like David Croft, the Crofty and Brundle do work pretty well as a partnership. The two together, they work well as a partnership, but there was definitely some difficulties, I would say, with that in how it worked. It didn't really flow.
Murray Walker was always very good solo. I mean, he did solo commentary for pretty much most of his career until guys like James Hunt and Brundle and everybody else stepped in. But Murray Walker's awesome. Like, I do like him, and the one thing or two things here. It's always fine if Murray Walker seems to get things wrong, but if you're like just a modern day up and coming commentator, it's not. So he's like one of the only guys who's allowed to get things wrong, and people just seem to still love him, which is, I don't know, it's just something you got to build with respect over time, I guess. And the other thing with Murray Walker is, and he does this well, he doesn't overcomplicate the way he speaks. Because I got to rank 3 different commentators here, which I all like. You've got your James Allen, who I'm a big fan of. He copped this criticism during the day when he used to commentate, but I think he's almost on the level of, for me, personal-wise, if I had to listen to anyone, I'd pick either him or Murray Walker. But James Allen would always speak very convoluted, use advanced words and that kind of stuff. You've got David Croft, who's a little in the middle, and you got Murray Walker, who just keeps it simple, and he's just got the voice. And I'm like, man, like, this is great, watching Formula One with this voice, and I just love it, the way he hypes things up. And the way he used to, his phrases, his Murrayisms, those were the best ones. He had a few in this race too.
He did, and I think that's why he was so heavily loved as the commentator that he was. He came from a different generation to what we have now, obviously with Crofty and people like that, and what it was with James Allen. And they're all different, and they all have their pros and cons to them. And I think the favoritism comes from who you enjoy the most. But from a pure enthusiasm standpoint, I don't think anyone can beat Murray Walker.
Yeah, apart from when he had to wait an hour for the second start, which you could tell Murray Walker was like, "Oh, I need a break." But anyway, that was big. I did like the part where he talked about, an if is a big word in Formula One. That was one of the Murray isms he had. When he called Damon Hill winning the race across the line, he said fantastic, just the way he said it. And I was like, great call.
Got a lot of criticism for that, though, didn't he? He was very heavily criticised for it because a lot of people interpret it as being very fake and very disingenuous, in the fact that in the way that it all happened, in the way that he commentated Damon Hill winning the championship. It was as if it was like premeditated, whereas the reality is that Damon Hill and, well, the Hill family and Murray Walker were very close friends, and he was genuinely very emotional over the fact that Damon Hill had achieved. I've got to stop because I've got a lump in my throat. It was a genuine reaction to it. Whereas certainly in this country, there was a lot of criticism for it.
Well, the reason you say that is also it was a big win for Damon Hill because it was his first win post Williams. He proved that he could win in an inferior car, in a sense. No offense to the Jordan, but it was pretty inferior. But
for the '98 win, massively, and that. I mean, he should have won Hungary the year before in the Arrows. That he should have won that. And what was it, 2 laps in the end when Villeneuve got by him after being stuck in 6th gear?
Yeah, so I mean, Damon Hill is I think he's proven that despite being one of the oldest rookies in F1 history, I think he was like 60 years old when he was in his first Formula One season. Still pretty good when he was still racing later on. But yeah, my favorite Murrayism though was when he talked about Coulthard after the Schumacher incident, and it was during the safety car thing. And he's like, oh, I see this and blah, blah, blah. And, Coulthard, and he would never do that on purpose. David Coulthard's, not that kind of chap, blah, 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 blah. And he's been talking about 30 seconds. And then he just pauses and he goes, well, anyway, whatever. We're on to the next part. And I was just thinking like, all right, cool. I don't know why I enjoyed that so much, but it just seemed to me it was one of my favorite parts of Murray's call on the race. But can I tell you, this is an all-star team of a commentary booth. You got Murray Walker, Brundle, James Allen. Love the team, to sum it up. Great team right there. And I'll always be a James Allen fan, because when I watch those old races they uploaded, like from the mid-2000s, man, like James Allen, good on him. I don't know. I'm having a bit of a cream session here over James Allen, but I think he's pretty good with his commentary. Other stuff before we finish here. Did you see when Damon Hill crossed the line and there was some fan just like walking across the circuit afterwards? Did you see that part?
Yeah, I've seen that.
And the guy, like, I thought that was, I'm looking at it going, oh, that's just a marshal trying to pick up some debris or something. It's the fucking fan just walking across the track. He doesn't even look at the car next to him on the right. He's just walking, and he walks straight to the Jordan team, and what confuses me is that they keep celebrating with him or something. I get really confused.
Yeah, I again, the safety measures were a bit different than back in those days, but it's one of those weird things. It's like when a fan ran down the track. Remember in 2003 at Silverstone? Those types of things when Greenpeace were doing all their stuff. It's like how does it even happen?
Well, I don't. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Like, how do you get through? How does no one stop you? And this the way he would walk. And then I think his one little piggy friend behind him was the one who looked frantic and panicking. But this guy's walking whilst the car's coming in at 200 kilometers an hour, screaming through to La Source, and he's just not even looking at it. He's like, fuck it. I don't know if he was like trying to hurt himself, but it was very weird. And it made me watch back because they mentioned it, Hungary 1998. And when you watch when the race ends there and all the fans are on the track, that was crazy. I think we had a situation once at Monza too where Michael Schumacher had to...
that was the one I was going to say. There's one at Monza where he crosses the line and the gates open and the cars haven't finished racing, the ones that were towards the back. And they're already letting fans onto the track. I remember that. That's another crazy one. But I mean, if you think about like the times that Nigel Mansell won, and when the British fans were allowed on the track and they swarmed the car.
Yeah, that was just crazy. These days, you have to wait for anyone who's never been to a Formula One race, you have to wait for, I think, the green medical car to say it's safe to go on the track. Once that drives past your location, it's safe. So that's I guess that's the safety measure that they use today. But the Michael Schumacher one at Monza, I think he was waving fans away with both hands. So he had no hands on the wheel at one point. And then he's like, oh shit, I don't have 3 hands. I'm just going to grab the wheel and turn it this way. He was like millimeters from hitting some fans. He's still going.
Yeah.
I'm like, how about you slow down? But I think he didn't want to be mobbed the way that Mansell did. So he couldn't slow down.
Probably true, yeah.
So that was crazy. And remember Lewis Hamilton when he won the championship at Mexico? He had to run through all the fans.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's another one I was thinking of. He parked in the wrong place and had to run somewhere as well.
I'm trying to think. Oh, Jenson Button at Monaco.
Oh, Jenson Button, Monaco. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, he parked in the pit lane, didn't he?
Yeah, the good news is no fans with that one. But
true.
Yeah, well, Jenson been so used to not finishing on the podium at Monaco. I might actually be wrong. Did he finish on the podium beforehand at Monaco? Who cares? I'll give Jenson the saving grace and look it up right now. Did he finish at the podium in Monaco before 2009? Yes, in 2004. So we should have known. But anyway, whatever, as Mari Walker would say. Final things. Let's play a game here. I want to play Where Are They Now? I'm going to grab 3 random drivers for you.
Okay.
So Esteban Tuero, after this season, who drove the Minardi in 1998, finished 4 races, by the way, of 16. I don't know if that's a record. I think Andrea De Cesaris has probably beaten that. But he, where was he after 1998? Do you want to have a guess?
After 98...
No cheating, no Googling, no Wikipediaing.
No. Okay. Let me think.
He's Argentinian.
I think he went like touring car racing or something, or GT racing. Something like that.
He did that, and he eventually... Well, it says this on Wikipedia. We can probably trust it. It's got sources. Tuero announced his retirement from racing after the 2016 Argentinian touring car season, which technically makes no sense because, in my mind, he retired in 1998 when he left Formula One and pretty much didn't race anything for the rest of his career. This is an easy one. You would know this one. Shinji Nakano. Where is he now?
On Twitter?
No, you're thinking of what's his name again? The guy who got hit by the medical car.
Yeah, not Nakano. Yeah, I can't remember his name now.
Taki Inui. That's it.
Inui. Yeah.
No, you would know.
That.
Surely you know Shinji Nakano.
I don't know where he went to actually after F1. To be fair,
he competed in 9 24-hour Le Mans. I'm not kidding right now, Nick Rowland. Have I stumped you?
I didn't. You know what? I genuinely didn't actually know that. He can't have done that well.
Well, he was in LMP2 from this decade, but the decade before that he drove LMP1. But
all right. Okay. Well, yeah, I genuinely didn't know that he moved across.
Oh, there you go, Shinji Nakano, who drove for.
Oh wait, no. He did. Didn't he go to America?
Yeah, to do IndyCar or kart at one stage, whatever it was called back then.
Yeah, I remember something else. I just don't remember him at Le Mans.
Yeah, so couple seasons of Formula One, drove the Prost the year before as well, scored some points. Shinji Nakano, not a bad driver. Shinji Nakano had some good results in the Minardi. I remember he was. I still don't know why he didn't get another gig in Formula One. I would have loved to see him the next year. Maybe driving that MasterCard Lola. Was he signed up for that one? That would have been a catastrophe. It says here he was a test driver for Jordan the next year in 99, but I think Formula One pretty much ended for him from there. The final one, Ricardo Rossi, who we spoke about before, the Brazilian. Where is he now after 1998?
I'm gonna take another punt and say a bit like the one before. Did he go touring car racing back in Brazil?
Yeah, well, that's an easy because he's Brazilian. Everyone goes to Stock Car Brazil.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say the Stock Car Brazil. That's where they all go. Even Barrichello did it, didn't he? So
yeah, even the good ones.
Yeah. So yeah, I probably would have said that because that series is actually quite popular.
Yeah, and the talent, like we weren't trashing it just then, but the talent in Brazil Stock Car is very impressive. It's got some
very high.
Yeah, it does attract some hot European drivers. Even Mark Winterbottom from Supercars in Australia competed a couple of rounds. He spoke about I don't know if you caught this on the Supercars broadcast we did, but we're like, oh, what was Brazil like? You've been here before. And he's like, oh, apart from all the bodyguards and the bulletproof cars and everything, we got to the racetrack. It was pretty good from there on in. And I was thinking, yeah, he's definitely been to Brazil. He's not lying. Because there's been some years where I remember Jenson Button, I think, almost got held up, didn't he?
Jenson Button got held up. Bernie Ecclestone's been held up before. There's quite a few.
Well, so anyway, to answer about Riccardo Rossi, it says, I'm reading this off Wikipedia. After leaving the team at the end of the season, Rossi quit racing entirely to concentrate on his sportswear business in Brazil, along with a lot of other racing afterwards. So there you go.
There you go.
Riccardo Rossi. And by the way, I just quickly looked up Andrea de Cesaris, and no, Esteban Tuero doesn't beat his DNF record. Andrea de Cesaris, 1986, had one finish out of 16 races.
Wow.
1987... Andrea de Cesaris, 2 finishes in 16 races. He finished 3 races out of 32. One of those was a podium at Spa. This is in the Brabham. He drove for Brabham, I think, for one or 2 years, or just 1 year here. But
jeez,
yeah, incredible by the late Andrea de Cesaris. Unfortunately, passed away around 5 years ago or something. But that's pretty much it about that. That's our Where Are They Now segment. One thing about McLaren, before I forget, is do you think they were definitely the quickest car, obviously, this season, in the dry at least? Because this race made it seem like McLaren weren't the superior car. But I do feel like in the dry, which is, if you look back at the qualifying results for this race, McLaren were on pole by a second over everybody else in the field.
Yeah, I think that car that year was very, very good and quite a compliant car as well from what I remember in terms of what they were actually doing with development. So yeah, that doesn't really. I would probably say it would have been the best. For as many races as Schumacher did win, I think the McLaren Mercedes was the better overall package.
I thought you were going to say more there. You caught me by surprise. So, one more thing as well about the race. So, Ralf Schumacher, if we don't forget, finished second. They had team orders. We actually should probably touch up upon this because people are forgetting that he was eventually going to leave the team and head over to Williams. So, for Ralf Schumacher, this was a chance where, if you look back on it, if you're Ralf Schumacher, do you make the pass on Damon Hill or do you stick behind and obey team orders, even though you know you're not going to be with the team?
He was quite a bit quicker. If you remember, after the stops, he was over 20 seconds behind. And at one point, he was going over a second a lap quicker. He definitely wasn't as cutthroat as his brother. So if it was me, I would have gone for it. There's a win on there.
If you watch Drive to Survive, Will Buxton said that every world champion has like an inner bastard in them. So you think back to when Sebastian Vettel in the multi-21 incident, you look at some of the stuff Lewis Hamilton's done. Even though Lewis Hamilton's actually been, if you think back to that Hungary race, he actually did let Valtteri Bottas back through and stuff like that. So Lewis Hamilton's not a complete bastard, but Fernando Alonso's a definite example.
Yeah, but look at the circumstances of that with Bottas.
Nicest guy.
Completely different.
If you tuned into this race with 10 laps to go as a Formula One fan and you'd missed it, you had work or you had something going on, you come back in 1998 and you watch this race, what are you thinking?
What the hell happened? Like, seriously, when you actually see, you see the result, or you catch in the last few laps, you're like, why is there a Jordan leading?
And not only that, why are there 2 Jordans leading? Why is there a Prost in third?
Yeah, it's one of those where,
or a Sauber, sorry, not a Prost.
It's like Monaco '96. It's like, why is there a Prost winning a race?
Yeah.
Was it Panis won in Monaco, didn't he?
Well, yeah, exactly. And who was, by the way, am I wrong in this? Was it Trulli or Fisichella who had the huge crash at the exit of the bus stop? And I'm thinking of Fisichella, I think, because Trulli actually scored points, so I might be wrong with that. But yeah, one of the drivers, I think Fisichella, had a huge crash we didn't mention at the end of the bus stop. Remember, he just came across, knocked out all the cones, crashed into someone else. Was it Nakano? Can't remember. But there you go, one of the two. And final question for you. So if you were a new Formula One fan today, you only started watching, let's say, in 2019. You went and watched back this race for the first time in 1998. So then what do you think? That's a good question. We feel like we need to find some new fans to answer that one.
Yeah, we would need to get someone to watch that to actually find out. Especially, basically, I give any fan a pre-DRS race.
I don't know. I just the 2010 races were awesome. Like pre-Pirelli era, like every overtake was a big deal.
Yeah, there's a small where the rules changed in 2009. There's a small run of seasons that are littered with like domination years, but that are really, really good. So the 2010 season was a great season, but then it's followed up with an 11 season which is basically dominated by Red Bull and Vettel, which prompts a rule change. Then you get a 2012 season that's got like 7 different winners in the first 7 races, or 8, something like that. And then the tyres are changed mid-season, and Vettel goes on a bit of a streak, like that 4-race streak or something, and wins again. Then 13's a season of domination again by Red Bull.
Well, people forget as well, 2013, do you remember Mercedes used to actually, even pre-hybrid era, they were scoring poles and 1-2s in qualifying and would finish out of the points. Like, they just couldn't get the tyres to work in the race. Like, there were some races I remember at Spain where I can't remember if it was Rosberg or Hamilton on pole, but there were definitely 1-2. And then I think like Lewis finished almost a lap down after starting on pole. It was crazy.
Yeah, 13 was that run for Vettel. Oh, was 13 actually the tyre change year? 13 might have been the tyre change year, not 12. And then 14 is another, obviously turns into the new era that we're in now. But from like 09 to 13 was really, really, there was some really littered, really great seasons, but then there was also seasons of domination. It was weird.
Yeah, there was, but I mean, some of those seasons were still good. Like I, as I said, there were still some interesting aspects to 2011, 2013, which, not the most entertaining seasons, but they weren't complete ball fests in a sense. Like 2014 was technically dominated, even though the championship went down to the wire, double points, which is crazy for that final race. And going back to 2012, just before I forget, you said 7 different winners, first 7 races. I remember looking back at this going, it could have been 9 different winners from the first 9 races. I know I'm clutching at straws here. I'm being one of those guys. But if you remember Malaysia that year, Alonso won the second race. Do you remember Sergio Perez could have won that race in the Sauber? I don't know if you remember that one.
Yes, yeah.
It was in the wet, and I think he blew it at like 2 corners to go. He was ready to overtake Alonso and just ran wide, lost about 5 or 10 seconds. And that pretty much cost him a chance at the win. So that could have been a win for Perez, which means Alonso doesn't win his first race till Valencia, which is one of the best races of the decade. And that's where Alonso ruins the streak. So that was the 8th race. Silverstone ends up being Mark Webber. And I'm thinking, okay, what if Mark Webber doesn't win Monaco because Schumacher has pole, Michael Schumacher, doesn't get the 5-place grid penalty and wins the race in his comeback? Because remember, he hit Bruno Senna the round before. I'm chopping and changing here, but that was the worst penalty in Formula 1 history, not because he didn't deserve it, but just because it cost Michael Schumacher a chance to win Monaco the next round, because he scored pole and then had to start from 6th.
You know, when you look back at these races in general, though, and you think about how they are and what we see, like today, for example, or certainly what's going to be coming up this season, and it's just like, why did Formula 1 make so many bad decisions?
Yeah.
Because what we could have had across those seasons. That's You know, do you know what I mean? Though, it's the fact that we had there's so many opportunities, and it just, yeah.
Well, I am looking forward to, yeah, as much as I sort of find this weird, I am actually looking forward to the budget cap era coming up. That could be, yeah, just more competitive. I think it's needed. I think it's something that's needed to come in for a while. But I think what they should do is eventually, obviously, they'll increase the budget cap after they lower it. Because what you don't want to do is limit the technology advancement in this sport. So, for example, if you bring the budget cap to 130 million by, say, whatever year, 2026, but then by 2030, how about that budget cap goes up to like 170 million? And so as soon as teams start to be more profitable, it works like a salary cap in the NBA. I mean, the NBA salary cap used to be less than 50 million over a decade ago during the 2000s. Now it's up to over 100 million. So it's stuff like that where it can still work. And I trust Ross Brawn too. I think if you're going to put anyone to make those decisions, Ross Brawn's a good guy to do so. Seems to know his stuff. But anyway, that's pretty much it.
I'm not sure on that one at the moment. I would have expected. I would have liked to see a lot more, but never mind.
Well, I think
for another podcast.
For another podcast for sure. That's pretty much it. Have you got anything to plug right now? You're doing pretty well yourself in the sim racing universe.
We're doing okay. We're progressing. We're just trying to still work on things with satellite racing, and you know, Le Mans was great. For example, we finished 6th in LMP2 top split. That was cool. That was a really, really fun race as well. We're going to give Spa a crack as well next weekend. We're in the Creventic race this coming weekend. We've got an entry in that, which is cool. So yeah, I think for us and satellite racing as a team, it's going well. It's been a bit tricky at times, and just trying to get, you know, some fluidity and the team up and running properly. But I feel like we're on a good path now. So hopefully it's signs of good things to come.
Yeah, good luck. We'll keep track of you guys. How long you've been with Satellite for now? It's been over a year for sure. Been a few years.
Well, I've been in and around Satellite for a long, long time because the owner Matt Strand, I do a lot of karting for him. So real world stuff I've done a lot with Satellite for 7-8 years. So it's been a long time in that regard. But in terms of actually coming into iRacing, they were always an R-Factor 2 team. GPVWC, VEC, you know, they always race there. But yeah, in terms of iRacing stuff, it's only been about a year and a half of really getting going. So it's still kind of early days in terms of the iRacing stuff and building it and trying to prove ourselves and into a platform that, you know, not all of us are the most used to, the most accustomed to. Some drivers have come across from RF2. Some we've recruited in from the iRacing side, which has really been hugely beneficial. So yeah, it's one of those things where we're just trying to find our feet and, you know, put some good results together.
Yeah, awesome. All right, best of luck, mate. I'll leave you to it.
Cheers, buddy. Thank you.